If you'd like your shop to be cool in the summer and cozy in the winter, then stick around and check out some of my top tips on shop climate control. Hey guys, and welcome to another episode of DP Shop Talk. Now today we're going to be taking a look at an important aspect of just about any shop, and that is shop climate control. Now, controlling the climate in your shop not only makes it a more comfortable and enjoyable place to work in, but it also helps protect your investment in the tools and the materials that are contained within your shop. So since it happens to be the summertime right now here in Canada, we'll start by talking about humidity control and cooling, and then we'll talk about heating. So we'll start off with humidity control. Now here in Atlantic Canada, it tends to be very hot and humid in the summertime, much like it is today. So I found that at least in this climate, humidity control is one of the most important factors to shop climate control. Now, if you allow your shop to become a damp and humid environment, then it's not only uncomfortable to work in, but it will make your tools prone to rust issues, and it will also wreak havoc with the wood and wood products that are stored in your shop. Now, when it comes to working with solid wood, a stable humidity level is key. If the humidity fluctuates up and down, it's going to cause the wood to expand and contract, which is going to cause a whole host of problems. Now, I found that the most simple and effective way to control the humidity in a shop is with a basic dehumidifier. So I usually set it to about 60% relative humidity and let it do its thing. So as tempting as it is sometimes to just open up the windows and the doors and enjoy some nice fresh air while you're working, I usually keep the shop closed unless it's a nice dry day. So if the relative humidity outside is about 50% or less, then I'll open up the window or maybe the overhead door and enjoy some fresh air. But if it's humid outside, you're just letting in all that humidity that you're trying to get rid of. So now we'll take a look at cooling your shop, which this time of year in the summer is what everybody's trying to do. So we'll talk about fans, talk about avoiding solar heat gain, the benefits of a concrete slab, as well as using air conditioning. So one of the simplest and most economical ways to help keep yourself feeling cool in the shop or on site is with a fan. Now, NewAir sent out these two industrial shop fans to me a couple months ago to try out, and if I like them, share them with you guys. Now, this 18-inch floor fan I've been using mostly on site on the renovation projects that I've been working on. So usually I'll set it up in the doorway in the morning to draw in some of the cooler morning air, and then as it warms up outside, I'll bring the fan inside and run it just to create a nice airflow to help keep me cool while I'm working. So I'll quickly share with you guys what I've been enjoying about this floor fan and what's kind of set it apart from other fans that I've used in the past. Now, the first thing is a solid metal build quality. Now, everything on this fan pretty much is metal, so you don't have to worry about cheap plastic parts breaking or cracking like you would on, say, a cheaper household fan. It really is designed for working with, whether in the shop or on site. Now, it took a couple of good knocks when I was using it on site, and it didn't hurt it in the least. Now, another feature is the built-in cord wrap brackets on the back. That allows you to wrap up the cord and keep it out of the way when the fan's being transported or stored. I know in the past, other fans that I've had didn't have that, and the cord's always dragging all over the place, and it's a pain. Now, both of the fans have a 3-speed ball bearing motor, and they, on the high setting, they will move 3,000 CFM or cubic feet per minute of air. So for a relatively compact fan, they really do move a lot of air, which goes a long way in help keeping you cool. So the wall mount fan I've been using here in the shop. So it's pretty much identical to the floor fan, except it has a wall mount bracket rather than the floor stand, and a pull chain rather than the dial for the speed control. Now, I've really been enjoying having this thing wall mounted. It keeps it up out of the way so I'm not tripping over it, and I can point it exactly where I need it. Now, I've been using it to move air out of the shop as well. So there's been a few nice dry, cool days where I've opened the overhead door in the front of the shop, and this fan being in the back of the shop here will move the air out and create a nice air exchange. So in addition to keeping me cool, it's worked well if I'm doing something that's a little more smelly or has some fumes to it. It'll create good ventilation. So I was able to get a discount for you guys if you're interested in purchasing either one or both of these fans. If you follow the links in the video description below and enter promo code DANP, you'll get 15% off. Now, NewAir didn't sponsor this episode. They didn't pay me. I don't even make any commission off of those links in the video description below. They simply sent me the fans to try out. I liked them, so I wanted to pass along the info to you guys as well as the discount. Now, while solar heat coming through the windows is your friend in the wintertime, it's your enemy in the summer. Now, in this shop, there's only 2 windows and they both face north, so it's a perfect setup for keeping the shop cool in the summer since you don't get any sun coming through those windows. Now, in a previous shop that I referred to as my dream shop in a previous episode, and you can find the link for that above, solar heat gain was a huge problem. I had windows on the east, south, and west sides, so you got sunlight all day long. Now, it was great in the wintertime, it would heat things up, but in the summertime, it was terrible. Now, the solution that I came up with to combat the solar heat gain was these foil-faced rigid insulation panels. Now, they're just made from a 1/2-inch foil-faced rigid insulation. I cut them to the same size as the size of the glass on each window, and then finished them off with duct tape around the edges. Now, on the back, I applied adhesive-backed Velcro tabs to the back of the panel, and then the corresponding piece to the face of the glass on the outside of the window. So that way I could easily and quickly put them up or take them down. Now, with these panels being on the outside of the window, they reflected the solar heat away, and so the solar heat never even reached the glass, let alone inside the shop. So it made a dramatic difference in how cool I was able to keep the shop inside. So if you have windows that get a lot of solar heat gain, I would highly recommend making a set of these panels. Now, if your shop has a concrete slab, whether it's a garage building like this or a basement workshop, that's going to work in your favor for helping to keep things cool. Now, the slab itself and the ground underneath of it are generally cooler than the air outside, so they work almost like a heat sink to absorb some of the extra heat, helping to keep the inside of the shop cool. So for example, today is about 35 degrees Celsius outside with the Humidex. It's one of those really hot, sticky, humid, gross days. But in the shop here is 23 degrees Celsius and almost no humidity, so it's very comfortable in here. Now, there's 2 negative aspects to a slab that I want to mention as well. One is that if the slab wasn't properly constructed with a good vapor barrier underneath, it can be an extra source of moisture in the shop as the moisture from the ground comes up through it. So if that's the case, then your dehumidifier needs to be able to deal with that extra moisture. The second is if the slab is working well to cool things like it is here, then you need to be especially careful if you open any windows or doors on a hot, humid day. Where all the surfaces in the shop are cooled down, when that hot, humid air comes in and hits the cool surfaces, it's going to condense into water. Now, on metal surfaces, that's especially a problem because that's going to create rust. So if fans blocking out the sun and the help of a concrete slab aren't enough to keep your shop cool, then you might want to take a look at air conditioning. Now, if the tools and equipment in your shop produce a lot of heat or you live in a very hot climate, then air conditioning might be your best option, although it is usually the most expensive. Now, back in the shop that I showed you that I used the insulation panels on the windows, I used a portable air conditioner. Now, that shop had a wood frame floor, so it didn't have the advantage of a concrete slab to help cool things down. So the portable air conditioner helped, but it could never really keep up with the heat of the afternoon. It wasn't efficient enough or powerful enough to truly cool the shop. Now, what I had really wanted to set up in there was a heat pump with a ductless split, but I couldn't afford it. So if you have the money, I think a system like that would be the best way to go to keep the shop cool and dry, and you can also heat with it as an added bonus. Now, similar to what I just said when we were talking about concrete slabs, you need to be very careful about letting humid air into the shop if you've just cooled everything down with an air conditioner, because when that humid air hits the cool surfaces, then you get condensation and consequently rust. So now that we've covered how to stay cool in the summer, it's time to talk about how to stay warm in the winter. Now, it's critical to make sure that your shop is well sealed up. So windows, doors, electrical outlets, basically any penetrations in the exterior walls, you need to make sure that they're sealed up well and nice and tight. Now, I've found that overhead doors are one of the worst culprits, and they usually require some extra attention to make sure that they're nice and tight. Now, obviously, the better insulated your shop is, the easier it's going to be to heat. Now, everything I just said about sealing up and insulating your shop also applies to cooling and humidity control. So basically, the tighter and better insulated your shop is, the easier it's going to be to control the climate. So now we'll talk a little bit about the actual heat sources. Now, I won't be able to cover every type of system out there, but I will share with you some of the different systems that I've used in some of my shop spaces and what I liked and what I didn't like. So we'll start with the shop that I used the air conditioner and the insulation panels in. Now, in that shop, I used a direct vent forced air propane furnace that was hung from the ceiling and controlled by a programmable thermostat. Now, the things that I liked about that system were that it was economical to operate, it was direct vent, so the combustion air came from outside, it heated up the shop quite quickly, and it also gave a very nice heat. Now, on the downside, it was a forced air system, so I had to be mindful about how much sawdust was in the air. And also the way that I had it set up with the big plenum on the side for where the warm air comes back into the shop, that created quite a concentrated blast of air when the furnace was running. So it would blow around papers and sawdust and things like that, so that got a bit annoying. Now, that could have been fixed by adding in more ductwork to sort of more evenly distribute the air. Now, back in the original DP Shop Talk shop, I had electric baseboard heaters. Now, the things that I liked about that system were that it was quiet in operation and it didn't create any blasts of air. Now, on the downside, it wasn't that efficient to operate cost-wise, it didn't produce that nice of a heat, and it limited my shop layout possibilities since you can't really put much in front of a baseboard heater. Now, coming back here to the current shop, this shop has two commercial style electric heaters mounted on the walls, and they're both controlled by one central thermostat. So the things I like about this system are the heaters don't limit my shop layout options, they don't create huge blasts of air, and they heat up the shop relatively quickly. Now, on the downside, they're not all that cost efficient to operate, they're fairly noisy, and they don't really produce that nice of a heat, but they do get the job done. Now, the two other shop spaces that I had were both basement shops, so they just used the same heating system that the rest of the house had. Now, that solar heat gain that we were trying to avoid in the summertime is a welcomed help in the winter. So you want to allow as much of the solar heat gain through the windows as possible to help reduce your heating costs. Now, the last thing I want to talk about is how much you should heat your shop. Now, obviously, when you're working in your shop, it's going to be whatever temperature is comfortable for you to work in or whatever is economical to heat it to. Now, when you're not working in your shop, it's important to keep some heat on too. That keeps things like glue and finishes from freezing, and it also helps avoid that nasty condensation and rust that we talked about earlier. Now, for me personally, I usually keep the shop at about 6 degrees Celsius when I'm not working in it, and about 12 degrees Celsius when I am working in it. Now, the most important thing is keeping it above freezing, but everything above that will only help in avoiding condensation. So that's my take on shop climate control. Now, when I was writing this episode, there was a lot more information in my head that I wanted to share with you guys, but in the interest of not making it go on forever, I tried to condense it as much as I possibly could. So if there's something that I didn't cover or didn't cover in enough detail, make sure you leave a question in the comments below and I'll answer it as best I can. So I hope you guys have found this video helpful. If you have, don't forget to hit that like button, share the video with your friends, and if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It's always very much appreciated when you do. As always, make sure you leave your ideas, thoughts, and questions down in the comments below. So thanks for watching, and until next time, let's talk shop.